Has your family ever hidden $1 million secret from you during Thanksgiving dinner? I was 26 years old, loading the dishwasher after Thanksgiving dinner, when I overheard my aunt say something that made me drop a wine glass in the sink. Well, at least now that Ethan's trust fund activates next year, you won't have to keep up this charade anymore. My mother's response was quick and panicked. Caroline, not now. He doesn't know yet. I stood there with soap suds on my hands, frozen. Trust fund? What trust fund? My parents had spent my entire childhood telling me we couldn't afford things. I'd worked 2 jobs through college to pay tuition. I'd graduated with $40,000 in student loan debt. And apparently there was a trust fund? Let me back up and explain how we got here. I grew up in what I thought was a typical middle-class household in Connecticut. My father worked as an accountant. My mother was a part-time librarian. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house with a small yard. Nothing fancy, but comfortable enough. My parents always talked about budgets and being careful with money. When I wanted to go on the school trip to Washington, D.C. in 8th grade, they said we couldn't afford it. When I asked for a car at 16, they said I'd need to save up and buy my own. I accepted all of this. I thought we were just a normal family doing our best. I got a job at 15 busing tables at a local restaurant. In high school, I worked retail on weekends. When it came time for college, my parents sat me down and explained they couldn't help with tuition. They said they barely saved anything, and I need to figure it out through scholarships, loans, and work. I wasn't bitter about it. Lots of kids pay their own way through college. I worked hard, got decent scholarships, took out loans for the rest, and graduated with a business degree and a mountain of debt. After graduation, I got a job at a marketing firm, making $45,000 a year. Between rent, loan payments, and basic living expenses, I was barely scraping by. Meanwhile, my younger sister Emma had a completely different experience. She was 23, still living at home, and from what I could tell, our parents covered most of her expenses. When I asked about the difference in treatment, my mother said they were in a better financial position now and could help Emma more than they'd been able to help me. I accepted that explanation, even though it stung a little. So there I was, Thanksgiving 2019, at my parents' house for the annual dinner. The whole family was there. My parents, Emma, my father's sister Caroline, and her husband, my mother's brother Paul and his wife, and my grandmother on my mother's side. We'd had dinner, laughed at family stories, and watched football. Everything seemed completely normal until I volunteered to help clean up and ended up in the kitchen during that conversation. After my aunt's comment about the trust fund, I stood at that sink trying to process what I'd heard. Then I heard my grandmother's voice from the dining room. Martha, Caroline is right. The boy turns 27 in April. The trust activates automatically. You can't hide it anymore. My mother's voice was strained. I know, Mother. Robert and I have been discussing how to tell him. It's complicated. I walked back into the dining room with wet hands, still holding a dish towel. Everyone went quiet. 8 faces turned toward me with varying expressions of guilt and panic. Tell me what? I asked. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. What trust fund? My mother's face went pale. My father stood up quickly, nearly knocking over his chair. Ethan, let's talk about this privately. No. I stayed where I was. Everyone here clearly knows something I don't. Someone tell me what's going on. The silence stretched out. Finally, my grandmother spoke. Your maternal grandfather established a trust fund for you when you were born. It becomes accessible to you when you turn 27. I looked at my mother. How much? Ethan, this isn't the right time. How much? My father sighed. $2.4 million. The number hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. $2.4 million. I'd spent the last 8 years working my ass off, stressing about every expense, eating ramen to save money, while there was $2.4 million just sitting somewhere with my name on it. You're joking, I said. It's not a joke, my grandmother said quietly. Your grandfather was very successful in commercial real estate. He wanted to ensure his grandchildren were provided for. I looked around the room. Does Emma have one too? My parents exchanged glances. My mother nodded. Yes. Same amount. Hers activates when she turns 27. So in 4 years, Emma gets $2.4 million too. Yes. I felt like I was going to throw up. And you just never mentioned this. All those times I asked for help with college? All those times I called you stressed about money? My father stepped forward. There were conditions. Your grandfathers will specify that beneficiaries couldn't know about the trust until age 25 and couldn't access it until 27. He believed young people should learn the value of work before inheriting wealth. I was 25 2 years ago. We wanted to wait until you were closer to the activation date, my mother said weakly. We were going to tell you this Christmas. This Christmas? You were going to wait until I was 5 months away from accessing it. My Uncle Paul, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. For what it's worth, Ethan, I disagreed with keeping you in the dark this long. I told your parents they should have explained the situation when you turned 25. Well, thank you for that incredibly helpful opinion, I snapped. Really great how you all sat around discussing my life and my money while I struggled to pay rent. My Aunt Caroline looked uncomfortable. Your grandfather's intentions were good. He came from nothing and built his fortune through hard work. He wanted you to develop that same work ethic. So lying to me for 26 years was character building. We didn't lie, my mother protested. We just didn't tell you everything. That's literally what lying by omission means. I grabbed my coat from a hallway closet. Emma appeared in the doorway, looking stricken. Ethan, wait. Did you know? I asked her. She hesitated. They told me on my 25th birthday, 2 years ago. So Emma had known for 2 years. My little sister had walked around knowing she was going to be a millionaire while watching me stress about money. The betrayal felt like a physical weight on my chest. I have to go, I said. My father moved to block the door. Ethan, we need to discuss this properly. There's a lot you don't understand about the trust structure and the conditions. Get out of my way. Something in my voice made him step aside. I walked out into the cold November night and got in my car. My phone started ringing before I even left their driveway. I turned it off. I drove around for an hour, not really going anywhere, just driving. My mind was racing with questions and anger and confusion. $2.4 million. That was life-changing money. That was pay off all my debt, buy a house, start a business money. And it had been sitting there my whole life while I'd scrimped and saved and stressed. I finally went back to my apartment, a cramped one-bedroom, in a not great part of town that was all I could afford. I sat on my second-hand couch and stared at the water-stained ceiling, trying to process everything. The next morning, my phone had 37 missed calls and countless texts. Most were from my parents. A few from Emma. One from my grandmother asking me to call her. I ignored all of them and went into work like nothing had happened. But I couldn't focus. Every spreadsheet I looked at turned into calculations of how different my life could have been with financial security. That evening, my grandmother showed up at my apartment. She knocked firmly and called through the door. Ethan, I know you're in there. Your car is in the parking lot. Let me in, please. I'm 84 years old, and I'm not leaving until we talk. I opened the door. She walked in, looked around my sparse apartment, and sighed. Oh, sweetheart. Don't, I said. Don't feel sorry for me. Apparently, this was all part of some grand plan to teach me valuable life lessons. She sat down on my couch without being invited. Your grandfather was a complicated man. Brilliant, but complicated. He grew up during the Depression, truly poor. It shaped everything about how he viewed money. I don't want a history lesson. Too bad. You're getting one. Her voice was sharp. Sit down. I sat. Your grandfather built his fortune from nothing, she continued. He was obsessed with the idea that inherited wealth made people soft. He watched his friends' children squander family money on drugs and failed business ventures. He was determined that would happen to his grandchildren. So he decided to torture us instead. He decided to ensure you learned to support yourselves before handing you financial security. The trust was designed to activate at 27 because statistically, that's when most people have finished their education and established themselves in careers. Young enough to still have your whole life ahead of you, old enough to have learned discipline. And the rule about not telling us until 25. She looked uncomfortable. That was your grandfather's idea. He thought if you knew about the money earlier, you'd lose motivation to build your own life. It was meant to be protective. It was cruel. Yes, she agreed quietly. It was. I told him that when he was drafting the will. I told him transparency would be kinder. He wouldn't listen. He was convinced he knew best. I leaned back against the couch. Why didn't my parents tell me at 25 like they were supposed to? You'd have to ask them, but I suspect they were scared. They'd maintained the secret for so long, they didn't know how to come clean. Every month they waited made harder. Emma knew. Yes, your parents told her on her 25th birthday, as required. But by then, you were already 27 months past your own notification date. They'd already broken the protocol with you. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I asked the question that had been eating at me. What exactly are the conditions of the trust? My grandmother pulled out a folder from her purse. I brought copies of all the documents. You should have received these 2 years ago. She spread papers across my coffee table. The trust was established in 1993 when you were born. Your grandfather funded it with $2 million, which has grown to approximately $2.4 million through conservative investments. I looked at the documents. My grandfather's name, Mitchell Carrington, was at the top of the trust agreement. The language was dense legal text, but certain phrases jumped out. Promote self-sufficiency, ensure work ethic, prevent entitlement. The money becomes accessible to you on your 27th birthday, my grandmother continued. That's April 14th. You'll gain full control of the principal and all accumulated interest. There are no conditions on how you use it once it's released. So in less than 5 months, I just get it. Yes. The trustee will contact you to arrange the transfer. The current trustee is Lawrence Davidson at Whitmore Financial Services. He's been managing the trust since your grandfather passed away. I could pay off all my student loans. You could do a lot of things. I looked up at her. Why are you here? Really? She folded her hands in her lap. Because I love you. Because this situation has been handled badly. Because you deserve to have someone from this family be honest with you about what's happening. You kept the secret too. Yes, and I regret it. Your grandfather put conditions in his will that tied my hands legally. If I'd told you before the designated time, the trust could have been dissolved entirely, and you'd have received nothing. I had to choose between breaking your trust or protecting your inheritance. You chose the money. I chose what I thought would give you the most options in life. I'm not sure it was the right choice. After my grandmother left, I spent hours going through the trust documents. The numbers were staggering. $2 million invested in 1993, growing steadily for 26 years. The statement showed the current value at $2,387,642.18. All of it designated for me. I did the math on what I'd paid in student loan interest over the past 5 years. $23,000. Money I'd worked overtime to pay. Money that could have been avoided entirely if I'd known this trust existed. The anger came back in waves. I'd made decisions based on false information. I'd chosen cheaper colleges because I thought I had to. I'd worked brutal hours at jobs I hated because I needed the money. I'd said no to opportunities because I couldn't afford them. All while sitting on a fortune. My phone rang. My father. I answered this time. Ethan, please come over. Your mother and I want to explain everything properly. I'm not ready to talk to you yet. I understand you're angry. You have every right to be. But there's more to this situation than you know. Then explain it now. He sighed. Not over the phone. Please. Give us a chance to talk through this as a family. Family, I repeated bitterly. That's interesting coming from people who've been lying to me for 26 years. We were following your grandfather's wishes. Grandma said you were supposed to tell me at 25. You didn't. That wasn't Grandpa's rule. That was your choice. Silence on the other end. Then, you're right. That was our mistake. We were scared and we handled it badly. Please let us explain. I agreed to come over the following evening. I needed answers to questions that had been building since Thanksgiving. When I arrived at my parents' house the next night, they were both in the living room, sitting stiffly on the couch, like defendants waiting for a verdict. Emma was there too, perched nervously on the armchair. I stayed standing. Talk. My mother spoke first. Your grandfather's will was very specific. We weren't allowed to tell you about the trust until you turned 25. If we violated that condition, the trust would be dissolved and the money would go to charity. Grandma already explained that part. She also explained you were supposed to tell me 2 years ago. Why didn't you? My father ran his hand through his hair. We were scared. We'd watched the secret affect your whole childhood. We'd watched you work so hard, accomplish so much on your own. Part of us worried that telling you about the money would change you. Change me how? Make you less driven, less motivated. You'd built such a good life for yourself without the trust. A good life. I interrupted. Dad, I live in a crappy apartment with a leaky ceiling. I eat microwave meals because I can't afford groceries. I haven't been to a dentist in 3 years because I can't afford the copay. You think that's a good life? My mother's eyes filled with tears. We thought you were happy. You never complained. Because I thought we were poor. I thought you couldn't help me. I thought I had no choice but to struggle. Emma spoke quietly. I told them they needed to tell you. After they told me on my 25th birthday, I asked them when they were planning to tell you. They kept saying soon, but they never did. I looked at my sister. You knew for 2 years and never said anything. They told me it wasn't my place, that I'd violate the trust conditions if I told you. I'm sorry, Ethan. I should have told you anyway. My father stood up. We made a mistake. A big one. We kept telling ourselves we'd tell you next month, then next month turned into another month, and before we knew it, 2 years had passed. We convinced ourselves it was better to wait until you were closer to the activation date. Or maybe, I said slowly, you liked having control. You liked me thinking I needed to struggle. You liked being able to pat yourselves on the back for raising such a hard-working, independent son. My mother flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? You literally lied to me for my entire life. You watched me stress about money when there was millions of dollars sitting there. You let me take out loans I didn't need. You let me work myself to exhaustion when I had a trust fund. And you did all of that while knowing the truth. My father's voice was thick. Your grandfather's philosophy was that you needed to learn. Grandpa died when I was 12. These last 14 years of lying? That was your choice, not his. The room went silent. My mother was crying openly now. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 5 minutes. "I'll never forgive you for this," I said quietly. "Even after I get the money, even after years pass, I will never forget that you lied to me and watched me struggle when you could have helped." "Ethan," my mother reached for me. I stepped back. "I need to know everything about the trust. Every condition, every rule, every detail. I want copies of all the documents. I want contact information for the trustee. And I want all of it by the end of the week." My father nodded. "Of course. We'll get you everything." I left without saying goodbye. Emma followed me out to my car. "I really am sorry," she said. "I should have told you." "Yeah, you should have. Are you ever going to forgive us?" I looked at my little sister, who suddenly seemed very young despite being 23. "I don't know. Right now, I can't even look at any of you without feeling angry." "What are you going to do when you get the money?" "I have no idea." That was true. The trust activated in less than 5 months, and I had no plan for what to do with $2.4 million. Part of me wanted to do something dramatic and reckless just to spite my grandfather's intentions. But the practical part of me, the part that had been shaped by years of careful budgeting, couldn't imagine wasting that kind of money. True to his word, my father sent me copies of all the trust documents by the end of the week. I spent an entire Saturday going through every page with a highlighter and notebook. The trust was structured as an irrevocable grantor trust established by Mitchell Carrington in October 1993. The initial funding was $2 million. The stated purpose was to provide for the financial security of the beneficiary while ensuring said beneficiary develops appropriate work ethic and self-sufficiency before accessing inherited wealth. The conditions were clear. No access before age 27. No knowledge of the trust before age 25. If either condition was violated, the entire trust would be dissolved and donated to a charitable foundation Grandpa had established. After age 27, the money was mine completely. No restrictions on use. No oversight committee. Just a lump sum transfer. I also found something interesting buried in the documentation. There was a letter from my grandfather, written in 1993, to be delivered to me when I was notified about the trust. My parents had never given it to me. I called my father immediately. "Where's the letter Grandpa wrote to me?" Pause. "What letter?" "It's referenced in the trust documents. Section 7, paragraph 3. Trustee shall deliver sealed letter from grantor to beneficiary upon notification at age 25. Where is it?" More silence. "Then, I'll bring it to you tomorrow." My father showed up at my apartment the next morning with a sealed envelope. The paper was yellowed with age, and my name was written on the front in my grandfather's distinctive handwriting. I waited until he left to open it. The letter was dated September 1993, 1 month before the trust was officially established. My grandfather's handwriting was neat and precise. "Dear Ethan, as I write this, you're only a few months old, sleeping in the next room. Your grandmother is holding you. You have no idea that I'm making decisions that will affect your entire life. I'm establishing this trust because I love you and want you to be provided for. But I'm also adding conditions because I fear what easy money might do to you. I came from nothing. My father was a factory worker who drank away most of his paycheck. My mother cleaned houses. We were poor in a way that shaped everything about who I became. I was hungry as a child. Literally hungry. I wore shoes with holes in them. I dropped out of school at 16 to work. I built my fortune through decades of work, sacrifice, and smart decisions. Along the way, I watched wealthy families destroy their children with too much money too soon. I've seen trust fund kids who never worked a day in their lives, who had no purpose, no drive, no sense of accomplishment. I don't want that for you. By the time you read this letter, you should be 25 years old. You should have finished your education. You should have started your career. You should know what it means to work for something. My hope is that these past 25 years have taught you valuable lessons. That you've learned to budget, to plan, to appreciate the value of a dollar earned. That you've developed skills and work ethic that will serve you long after this money is gone. The money will be yours soon. You can do whatever you want with it. Waste it, invest it, give it away. That's your choice. But you'll make that choice as someone who knows what it's like to live without it. That knowledge will serve you well. I know you might be angry that this trust was kept secret. Your parents probably struggled with that decision. But I believed, and still believe, that not knowing was essential. If you'd grown up knowing you had millions waiting, would you have worked as hard? Would you have pushed yourself? Would you have become the man I hope you'll be by the time you read this? I hope you'll forgive an old man for trying to give you what I believe is the greatest gift, the ability to make your own way in the world before inheriting wealth you didn't earn. Use the money wisely. Build something meaningful. Help others. And remember that the most valuable things in life can't be bought. Asterisk love, Grandpa Mitchell. I read the letter 3 times. Part of me understood what he'd been trying to do. Part of me was still angry about the deception. But mostly, I felt sad that he died when I was 12, before we could have any real conversations about money or life, or what he'd hoped for me. I also felt the weight of his expectations. He'd created this whole elaborate plan to shape me into the kind of person he thought I should be. And in some ways, it had worked. I was disciplined, hardworking, and financially responsible. But I'd also been stressed, resentful, and felt betrayed by my own family. Over the next few weeks, I met with Lawrence Davidson, the trustee who'd been managing the investments. He was a friendly man in his 60s who'd known my grandfather personally. Mitchell was one of my first clients, Lawrence explained in his downtown office. He was very particular about how this trust should be structured. We had dozens of conversations about the conditions and his goals. Did you agree with his approach? Lawrence considered the question. I thought it was unorthodox. Most grandparents want to spoil their grandchildren, not hide wealth from them. But I understood his reasoning. He'd seen too many young people damaged by easy money. Did you know my parents didn't tell me at 25 like they were supposed to? His expression became uncomfortable. I suspected. The trust documents require notification at 25, but there was no mechanism to enforce it. I assumed your parents had their reasons for the delay. You could have contacted me directly. The trust documents designated your parents as intermediaries until you reached 27. It wasn't my place to override their decisions, even if I disagreed with them. So everyone had known. Everyone had let it happen. Lawrence walked me through the trust portfolio. Conservative investments, mostly index funds and bonds. The growth had been steady over 26 years. On April 14th, I'd receive a check for $2,387,642.18, minus applicable taxes. What do most beneficiaries do with trust distributions? I asked. It varies. Some pay off debts. Some invest it. Some spend it unwisely and regret it later. He looked at me seriously. You've spent your whole adult life learning to manage money carefully. Don't abandon that discipline just because you suddenly have more of it. I thought about that a lot over the next few months. The trust activated on April 14th. I'd be 27 years old with $2.4 million in the bank. What was I supposed to do with it? I made lists. Lots of lists. Priority 1, pay off debt. Student loans, $37,420. Credit card, $3,200. Car loan, $8,100 total, $48,720. Priority 2, emergency fund. 6 months of expenses, $18,000. Priority 3, housing. Down payment on modest house, $60,000 to $80,000. Priority 4, retirement. Max out investment accounts, $50,000. After essentials, I'd still have over $2 million left. The number was incomprehensible. I started researching. I read books about wealth management. I talked to financial advisors. I learned about tax implications and investment strategies and the importance of not making impulsive decisions. I also started therapy. Dr. Sarah Chen specializes in family dynamics and wealth psychology. Her office was in a quiet building downtown with comfortable chairs and soft lighting. Tell me how you're feeling about all of this, she said during our first session. Angry, confused, betrayed, grateful, guilty, all of it at the same time. Guilty about what? About complaining. I'm about to inherit $2.4 million. How can I be upset about that? Because the money doesn't erase the years of deception. You're allowed to feel both grateful for the inheritance and angry about how it was handled. Over weekly sessions, Dr. Chun helped me work through the complicated emotions. The anger at my parents, the resentment about the years of struggle, the guilt about having advantages others didn't, the fear of how the money might change me. Your grandfather was trying to shape you, Dr. Chun observed during one session. He believed his way was the right way. But that doesn't make it right. You get to decide who you are and what you do with this money. I don't want to waste it. I don't want to prove him right by becoming lazy or entitled. Then don't. But also don't let his voice in your head control your choices. This is your money now. You get to decide what meaningful looks like for you. In February, I finally agreed to have dinner with my parents. Emma was there too. We met at a restaurant, neutral territory. My mother looked nervous. Thank you for coming. I nodded but didn't say anything. My father cleared his throat. We've been talking to a therapist too. About how we handled this situation. About the mistakes we made. And we understand now that we prioritized the wrong things. We prioritized your grandfather's rules over your well-being. We prioritized avoiding difficult conversations over being honest with you. We're sorry, my mother added. Truly sorry. Not just because you're angry, but because we hurt you, and that was wrong. I looked at both of them. I've been thinking a lot about trust. About how once it's broken, it's really hard to rebuild. You lied to me for 26 years. You watched me struggle and never said a word. How do we come back from that? I don't know, my father said honestly, but I'd like to try. We talked for 3 hours that night. They explained their reasoning and their fears and their regrets. I explained my anger, my sense of betrayal, my struggle to reconcile the parents I thought I knew with the people who'd kept such a massive secret. By the end of dinner, we hadn't fixed everything, but we'd started talking honestly, maybe for the first time ever. Emma drove me back to my apartment. "Thank you for giving them a chance," she said. "I'm doing it for me, not them. I don't want to spend the rest of my life angry." "What are you going to do with the money?" "I'm still figuring it out. Pay off my debts first. Then maybe buy a house. Invest most of it. Use some to start a business I've been thinking about." "What kind of business?" "Financial literacy programs for college students. I've been thinking about all the things I wish I'd known when I was 18. Maybe I could help other kids avoid the mistakes I made." Emma smiled. "Grandpa would approve of that." "I don't really care if he would approve. That's the point." April 14th came faster than I expected. I woke up on my 27th birthday to an email from Lawrence Davidson. The trust had been dissolved. The money had been transferred to my bank account. I was officially a millionaire. I logged into my bank app with shaking hands. The balance showed $2,387,642.18. I stared at the number for a long time. Then I got dressed and went to work like it was any other day. That evening, I sat down with my lists and my budget spreadsheets and my plans. I transferred money to pay off my student loans. I paid off my credit card and my car. I set up an emergency fund. I scheduled meetings with financial advisors to discuss long-term investment strategies. The next week, I started looking at houses. Not mansions, not show-off properties, just a modest 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood, something that felt like home. I also set up a meeting with a business consultant to discuss my financial literacy program idea. If I was going to start a business, I wanted to do it right. My parents called on my birthday to congratulate me. My mother asked what I was going to do with the money. "Smart things," I said. "Boring things." Grandpa would be disappointed by how boring my plans are. My father laughed. "I think he'd be proud, actually." Maybe, maybe not. Either way, it didn't matter as much as I thought it would. 3 months after the trust activated, I bought my house. It was a 1970s ranch that needed updating, but it had good bones and a nice yard. I hired contractors to fix the obvious problems, then moved in with my secondhand furniture and a sense of surreal accomplishment. I kept my job at the marketing firm. I liked my work, and I wasn't ready to quit just because I could afford to. Besides, Grandpa's letter had made one good point. The money was most valuable if I had something meaningful to do with my life beyond spending it. I also started volunteering with a nonprofit that helped first-generation college students navigate financial aid and budgeting. Every week, I'd meet with kids who reminded me of my younger self, stressed and overwhelmed by money decisions. I'd help them build budgets, understand loan terms, and make informed choices. It felt good. Better than spending money on expensive things I didn't need. My relationship with my parents slowly improved. It took time and a lot of honest conversations. They'd never fully earned back my trust, but we were building something new, something more honest. Emma and I became closer too. She started asking me for advice about her own trust fund, which would activate in a few years. We talked about the weird psychology of having money you didn't earn and the responsibility that came with it. "Do you think Grandpa's plan worked?" she asked one day over coffee. I thought about it. In some ways, yes. I did learn to be financially responsible. I did develop work ethic. I did build a life for myself. But the lying damaged our family. It created resentment and mistrust. I'm not sure the trade-off was worth it. What would you do differently if you could go back? I'd want honesty. I'd want my parents to say, "Hey, there's money in your future, but you still need to learn to support yourself. The money is for later, not now." That would have given me hope during the hard times without making me lazy. Emma nodded thoughtfully. "When I have kids, I'm going to tell them the truth about money. Not hide it, not pretend we're poor when we're not. Just be honest." "That's probably healthier," I agreed. 6 months after getting the money, I launched my financial literacy program. I called it Second Generation Financial, aimed at helping first-generation college students and young professionals navigate money decisions their parents couldn't guide them through. I used $100,000 from the trust to fund the first year of operations, creating free workshops, one-on-one counseling, and online resources. The response was overwhelming. Within 3 months, we'd helped over 200 students. Kids who'd never had anyone explain compound interest or credit scores or the real cost of student loans. Kids like I'd been, making important financial decisions with incomplete information. One student, Marcus, came to me drowning in private loan debt from a for-profit college. His parents hadn't understood financial aid, and he'd signed papers for loans with 12% interest rates. We spent weeks working through his options, eventually getting him into a refinancing program that cut his interest rate in half. He cried in my office when he realized he'd save over $30,000 over the life of the loans. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Like, why you care about random broke kids? Because I was a random broke kid once. Someone should have helped me. Now I can help you. That felt more meaningful than anything I could have bought with the money. My grandmother visited my new house on a Sunday afternoon in October. She walked through each room slowly, running her hand along the walls, looking at the furniture I'd carefully chosen. "It's nice," she said finally. "Modest. Practical. Your grandfather would approve." I didn't do it for his approval. I know. That's why he really would approve. She sat down at my kitchen table. "Can I tell you something I never told anyone?" I joined her. "Sure. Your grandfather and I fought about that trust for years. I thought the secrecy was cruel. He thought it was necessary. We had the same argument dozens of times before he died." She looked out the window at my backyard. "After he passed, I considered telling you myself. I probably should have. But I was scared of losing you, scared of violating his wishes, scared of making the wrong choice. You were following the legal conditions. Legal isn't the same as right. I chose following the rules over doing what was best for you. I'm sorry for that." It was the first time she'd actually apologized. "Thank you for saying that. Your parents made mistakes. I made mistakes. But we all did it because we loved you, even if we showed that love badly." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You've handled this with more grace than we deserved. I'm still angry sometimes. You're allowed to be angry forever if you need to be. Anger is honest. It's the pretending that nothing happened that would worry me." We sat together in comfortable silence for a while. Then she asked, "Are you happy?" I thought about it. I'm getting there. The money helps, obviously. But what really helps is building something meaningful with it. Making choices that feel true to who I am, not who Grandpa wanted me to be. That's all any of us can do. A year after the trust activated, I was invited to speak at a conference about wealth transfer and family dynamics. The organizer had heard about my financial literacy program and wanted me to share my perspective as someone who'd experienced a complicated inheritance. I almost said no. Talking publicly about my family's dysfunction felt uncomfortable. But Dr. Chun encouraged me to consider it. Your story might help other families avoid similar mistakes. So I stood on a stage in front of 300 estate planning attorneys, financial advisors, and wealthy parents, and I told them everything. The years of not knowing, the discovery at Thanksgiving, the betrayal and anger, the slow process of figuring out who I was in relationship to money I didn't earn. The intention behind my grandfather's trust was good, I said. He wanted to teach me values. But the method caused real harm. Families need honesty more than they need elaborate tests of character. After the speech, dozens of people came up to talk to me. Parents who were considering setting up trusts for their kids. Adult children who'd experienced similar situations. Everyone struggling with the complicated intersection of love and money. One woman in her 60s, clearly wealthy from her designer suit and jewelry, waited until everyone else had left. "My husband and I have been planning a trust exactly like your grandfather's," she said quietly. "We were going to hide it from our grandchildren until they were 30. After hearing you speak, I don't think we should do that. What will you do instead?" Tell them the truth. Tell them there's money in their future, but they still need to build their own lives. Give them something to work toward rather than something to discover through betrayal. She shook my hand firmly. "Thank you for your honesty." That conversation made the whole uncomfortable experience worthwhile. By 18 months after the trust activated, I'd settled into my new life. The money was still there, most of it invested conservatively, growing slowly. I'd bought my house outright, no mortgage. I'd funded my business. I'd set aside money for retirement and emergencies. The rest sat in index funds, boring and safe. I still worked at the marketing firm, though I'd negotiated to go part-time so I could focus more on second-generation financial. My boss had been surprisingly supportive. "You're doing meaningful work," she said. "I'd rather have you part-time and passionate than full-time and burned out." My relationship with my parents had reached a new equilibrium. We had dinner together every few weeks. We talked about surface-level things mostly, but occasionally we'd venture into deeper conversations about the past. Progress was slow, but was progress. Emma turned 25 in August, and my parents did things differently with her. They took her out to a nice dinner and told her everything about her trust fund. The amount, the conditions, the timeline. They also apologized for how they'd handled things with me and promised to be transparent with her. She called me afterward. They told me everything. "How do you feel?" Weird. Relieved that I don't have to pretend I don't know anymore. Guilty that they're treating me better than they treated you. Don't feel guilty. You're getting the benefit of their growth. That's how it should work. Are you sure you're okay with this? Yeah, actually I am. You deserve honesty. And I meant it. I'd let go of most of my bitterness. Not all of it. Maybe that would never completely disappear. But enough that I could be happy for my sister getting a better experience than I'd had. 2 years after everything changed, I was having coffee with a woman named Rebecca who'd attended one of my financial literacy workshops. She was 24, working as a nurse, and stressed about student loan debt. We met monthly to review her budget and strategize debt payment. During one meeting, she asked, "How did you learn all this stuff? Like, did your parents teach you?" I laughed. "That's a complicated story. I've got time." So I told her, not all the details, but the broad strokes. Growing up thinking we were struggling, working through college, finding out about the trust fund, learning to navigate sudden wealth. She listened with wide eyes. "That's insane. Your family really never told you?" "Nope. Not until I overheard it by accident." "But you're not bitter? You're using the money to help people like me." I was bitter for a long time, but staying bitter was exhausting. Using the money for something meaningful feels better. She shook her head. "I don't know if I could do that. If my family lied to me like that, I'd probably just cut them off." I thought about it, but they're still my family. They made terrible choices, but they did it out of misguided love, not malice. That's different than not caring at all. I guess that makes sense. After she left, I thought about how far I'd come. 2 years ago, I would have said I'd never forgive my parents. Now we had dinner together regularly. I'd never trust them the way I did before, but we'd built something new. The money had changed my life, obviously, but not in the ways my grandfather probably expected. I didn't become lazy or entitled. I didn't waste it on luxury items or foolish investments. Instead, I'd used it as a foundation to build something meaningful. Second Generation Financial was now helping over 1,000 students a year. We'd expanded to 3 cities with plans for more. Every week, I got emails from young people thanking us for helping them avoid financial mistakes that could have haunted them for decades. One email particularly stuck with me. A girl named Ashley wrote, "I was about to take out $80,000 in private loans for a fashion design degree from a for-profit school. Your workshop helped me realize that was financial suicide. I'm going to community college instead, and I'll save over $60,000. You literally changed the entire trajectory of my life." That impact meant more than any expensive car or luxury vacation ever could. My grandfather had wanted to teach me that money should be earned, not given. That work ethic mattered more than wealth. That character was built through struggle. He was partially right. Struggle had taught me things. But so had honesty, compassion, and having examples of healthy relationships with money. The deception had taught me lessons too, just not the ones he intended. On the 3-year anniversary of that Thanksgiving dinner, I invited my whole family to my house. My parents, Emma, my grandmother, my aunt and uncle. Everyone who'd been there when The Secret came out. I made dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and salad. We sat around my dining room table, and I stood up to say something I'd been thinking about for months. 3 years ago, my life changed in this really unexpected way. I learned I'd been lied to for my entire life. I inherited money I didn't know existed. I got angry, really angry. Everyone shifted uncomfortably. But I've been thinking a lot about what Grandpa Mitchell was trying to teach me. And I think he was both right and wrong. He was right that having to work for things taught me discipline. He was wrong that lying was necessary to achieve that. My mother wiped her eyes. I'm not going to say I'm grateful for the deception. I'm not. It damaged our relationships, and that damage might never fully heal. But I am grateful for the money, not because of what I can buy, but because of what I can do with it. I pulled out my laptop and showed them the numbers. Second Generation Financial had helped 1,247 students in the past 2 years. Those students had avoided a collective $4.2 million in high-interest debt. 43 had been able to stay in school because we'd helped them navigate financial aid. 18 had started their own small businesses with proper planning and budgets. This is what that trust fund became, I said. Not a luxury car or a mansion. Not early retirement or world travel. It became opportunity for people who needed it. My grandmother was openly crying now. Mitchell would be so proud of you. Maybe. But more importantly, I'm proud of me. I took money that came with control and conditions and secrecy, and I turned it into something transparent and helpful. My father stood up and hugged me. I'm sorry we put you through this. I'm sorry we weren't brave enough to tell you the truth. I know, and I'm working on forgiving you. But I need you to know that if you ever lie to me again about anything important, we're done. I mean that. We understand. We spent the rest of the evening talking more honestly than we ever had. Emma shared her plans for her trust fund when it activated. My parents talked about their own complicated relationships with money growing up. My grandmother told stories about my grandfather that I'd never heard, the good and the bad. It wasn't perfect. We were still a family with scars and complicated history. But we were talking, and that was something. Later that night, after everyone had left, I sat on my back porch looking at the small garden I'd planted. Tomatoes, peppers, herbs. Nothing fancy, but I'd grown it myself. I thought about Marcus, the teacher from my early story who I was still with. He'd stuck by me through the discovery, the anger, the gradual healing. He'd never cared about the money. When I'd wanted to pay off his student loans as a gift, he'd refused. "I need to do this myself," he'd said. "Just like you needed to." I understood that now, in a way, I couldn't have 3 years ago. My phone buzzed with an email. Another student requesting help with financial planning. I'd respond tomorrow, during my office hours at Second Generation Financial. The trust fund that was supposed to teach me the value of work had actually taught me something different. The value of honesty, the importance of using advantages to help others, and the possibility of taking something broken and building something better from the pieces. My grandfather had tried to control my development through secrets and conditions. In the end, he taught me that the most valuable thing you can give someone isn't money, it's the truth and the freedom to make their own choices. I went inside and pulled out my journal, something Dr. Chun had encouraged me to keep. I wrote, 3 years since The Secret came out. I'm 29 now. I own a house I love. I run a business that matters. I have relationships that are healing, even if they're not perfect. I have money I'm using wisely. I have work that feels meaningful. Grandpa Mitchell wanted to teach me that I didn't need his money to build a good life. He was right about that, but for the wrong reasons. I didn't need his money because I'm capable and resourceful. But having his money and choosing to use it well, that's its own kind of strength. The trust fund was supposed to be a gift with conditions. Instead, it became a lesson in setting my own terms. I'm not the person Grandpa tried to shape through secrecy. I'm the person I became despite the secrecy. And I'm okay with that. I closed the journal and thought about the future. Emma would get her money in a few years. We'd already talked about her possibly joining Second Generation Financial, using her background in social work to expand our services. We could help more people together. My parents were talking about setting up their own philanthropy, inspired by what I'd built. They wanted to fund scholarships for first-generation college students. It was their way of trying to make amends, I think. I'd agreed to help them structure it properly. Even my grandmother was getting involved. She donated a significant amount to Second Generation Financial and started volunteering at our workshops, sharing her experience building a business from nothing. The family that had been built on secrets was slowly rebuilding itself on transparency. None of it erased what had happened. The years of unnecessary struggle, the betrayal, the anger. Those things were part of my story now, woven into who I'd become. But I'd learned something important. You can't control how your story starts, but you get to decide how it continues. My grandfather started my story with a trust fund and conditions and secrets. But I was writing the next chapters myself. And those chapters were about honesty, purpose, and using advantages to lift others up. The money was just money. What I did with it, that was the real inheritance. 3 months later, I got an unexpected call from a producer at a financial literacy podcast. They'd heard about my story and wanted me to do an interview about navigating sudden wealth and family dynamics around money. I almost said no. But then I thought about all the people who might be dealing with similar situations. Adult children who discovered family secrets. Young people trying to navigate complicated inheritances. Families struggling with honesty around wealth. I said yes. The interview went viral. Within a week, I'd received hundreds of emails from people sharing their own stories. Adult children who discovered hidden trust funds. Parents who'd made similar mistakes and wanted advice on how to make amends. Financial advisors asking how to counsel clients on transparent wealth transfer. The response was overwhelming, but it confirmed something I'd suspected. My family's dysfunction wasn't unique. Lots of families struggled with money and honesty. Lots of people had been shaped by financial secrets. I started a blog sharing lessons I'd learned. Not advice. I wasn't qualified to give financial advice. Just my experience and what had worked for me. The readership grew quickly. Apparently, people were hungry for honest conversations about the messy intersection of family and money. One blog post particularly resonated. I titled it, "The Things Money Can't Buy Back." I wrote about how no amount of wealth could erase the years of believing I was poor. How I'd made decisions based on false information that shaped my entire young adult life. How trust, once broken, is incredibly hard to rebuild. But I also wrote about the things money could do. Fund education. Create opportunities. Help others. Build something meaningful. Change lives. The comments section filled with people sharing their own stories. It became a community of people navigating complicated relationships with inherited wealth, family expectations, and the challenge of building authentic lives when money complicates everything. Now, 3.5 years after that Thanksgiving dinner, I'm sitting in my home office finishing this story. Second Generation Financial just hired our 10th full-time employee. We're expanding to 5 more cities next year. We've helped over 2,000 students avoid predatory loans and build healthy financial habits. My relationship with my parents is okay. Not perfect. We'll probably never get back to the innocent trust one had before I learned about the deception. But we have dinners together. We have honest conversations. They're trying, and I'm trying, and that's enough. Emma's trust fund activates in 8 months. She's excited and nervous and grateful to know what's coming instead of being blindsided. We're already planning how she'll use her inheritance to join the business and expand our services. Marcus and I got engaged last month. He still teaches high school. I still run my financial literacy program. We still live in the modest house I bought 3 years ago. The money sits mostly invested, growing quietly, funding the work we believe in. My grandmother is 87 now and in declining health. I visit her every week. We talk about my grandfather, about money, about family, about regrets. She tells me she's proud of what I've built. She admits the secrecy was a mistake. She says if she could go back, she'd have fought harder against my grandfather's conditions. I tell her it's okay, that I've made peace with how things happened, that I took something painful and built something good from it. Last week, she gave me another envelope. "This is from me," she said. "Not from your grandfather. Just from me." Inside was a letter and a check for $50,000. The letter explained that she wanted to contribute to second-generation financial while she was still alive to see the impact. The check was her way of saying she believed in what I was doing. I cried reading it, not because of the money, but because of what it represented. My grandmother, who'd been complicit in the secrecy, was now supporting my work built on transparency. That felt like healing. So has my family ever hidden $1 million secret from me during Thanksgiving dinner? Yes. And it broke something in our family that can never be fully repaired. But it also taught me things I might not have learned otherwise. That you can survive betrayal. That you can take inherited wealth and use it meaningfully. That secrets eventually come out, and honesty is always better in the long run. That family relationships are complicated, and forgiveness is a choice you make every day, not a destination you reach. The trust fund was supposed to teach me to work hard. Instead, it taught me to value honesty, to use advantages responsibly, and to build something bigger than myself. My grandfather tried to control my development through secrecy and conditions. In the end, he gave me the tools to become someone who couldn't be controlled by him, by money, or by anyone else. And maybe, in a twisted way, that's exactly what he wanted all along. Thanks for sticking with me through all this. It's definitely been a journey worth sharing. Until we meet again, folks, if you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.